Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep into the world of construction and demolition today.
Yeah, getting into the nitty-gritty.
And we've been talking about how some things just never seem to change in this industry.
Right, some persistent problems.
Exactly. And today we're focusing on this idea of why the folks actually out there on the front lines, the ones doing the work.
The boots on the ground.
Yeah. Why they don't seem to have much say in making things better, safer, more efficient.
Right. Why aren't those voices heard more?
And our sources for all this are episodes of the Breakfast Show. Have you heard of it?
Oh, yeah, it's that daily live stream thing, right, for the construction and demolition world.
Yep. And what's really interesting is their after show segment. They call it the Craic.
Ah, I've caught a few of those.
Oh.
It's pretty real.
It does. It's where these industry veterans just let loose and share their unfiltered thoughts.
Yeah, guys like Gary, Steve, Jim, Peter, Mark, and Alex.
Those are the voices we're tuning into today.
Mm-hmm.
And what's fascinating to me is these guys are out there every day dealing with the risks, the deadlines, all of it.
They're in the trenches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So why isn't their knowledge, their expertise being taken more seriously when it comes to, improving things?
It's a good question. The source material hints at a few possible explanations. One is this whole culture of hierarchy in the industry.
Like a top-down kind of thing.
Yeah, it's almost like there's this assumption that the workers on the ground lack the big picture view,
Like they're just focused on their specific tasks and not the overall success of a project.
Exactly. And then there's this quote from Jim Turner, one of the guys on the Craic, that really got me thinking.
What do you say?
He said, if management were to consult with workers and make their firms safer, more efficient, more profitable, they would look good.
Makes you wonder why that's not the norm.
Right? It seems so logical, but there might be this fear of rocking the boat, or maybe even a fear of what they might uncover.
Like uncomfortable truths about how things are really run.
Exactly. And speaking of uncomfortable truths, one topic that kept coming up on the Craic was the whole issue of drugs and alcohol on construction sites.
Yeah, that's a sensitive one for sure.
It is. But the guys didn't shy away from it. McNorton actually said, as for drugs, let's face it, if the office staff had to do a test, most of them would be out the door.
Whoa, that's a pretty bold statement.
It is. It kind of throws a wrench in that whole perception that substance use is just a blue-collar problem, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Makes you wonder how widespread it really is across the whole industry.
And the source material points out this resistance to mandating drug and alcohol testing.
I wonder why that is. Is it a fear of losing workers?
Could be.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a fear of what those tests might reveal about the deeper culture.
Definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
And it's not just substance use. There's also this recurring problem of company collapses.
Oh, yeah. We see those headlines all the time. Firms going belly up workers, not getting paid, projects left unfinished.
It's a mess. And Mark Anthony, another voice from the Craic, he drew a parallel between two big collapses. You might remember Carillion and ISG.
Oh, yeah, those were huge stories.
And Mark was saying how, despite all the promises to learn from these situations, the same patterns keep repeating.
Like the industry hasn't really learned its lesson.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
He specifically mentioned how both Carillion and ISG grew too fast, took on too much, and just crumbled.
Sounds familiar.
Right. And what's crazy is this whole thing about the directors of these failed companies often popping up again, leading new firms.
Like a revolving door?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Mark compared it to how easy it is to get a divorce these days.
Divorce. How's that relate?
Well, he's suggesting that company insolvency, when a company can't pay its debts in full,
Yeah.
he's saying that maybe it's become too easy. Kind of like divorce used to be a big deal, but now it's almost commonplace.
Interesting analogy.
And his point is that these companies can just collapse, leave all this damage behind, and those in charge don't really face consequences.
So the question is, if there's no real accountability, what's stopping this from happening over and over again?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah. It's a worrying trend for sure. But, despite all these problems, what I found really interesting listening to the Craic was this passion these guys have for the industry.
Yeah, they really do.
Like, they're not just complaining, they genuinely want to see things get better.
It's like they have this deep understanding of the work, and they're just bursting to share it.
Yeah, but the question is anyone listening?
Right. And one comment that really resonated with me was Dan's take on communication on construction sites.
Oh, yeah? What do you say?
He said it's all down to a lack of communication. People would rather go through emails, texts, and all that's going on paper rather than asking the guys with the actual experience what their views are.
It's like the opposite of what you'd think would happen.
Right. You'd think with all this technology, communication would be better, but sometimes it seems like it just creates more barriers.
Absolutely. Like, instead of just picking up the phone and talking to the person who knows, they send an email and wait days for a response.
And all that time projects are delayed, frustration builds the potential for mistakes, increases.
Exactly. It's a classic example of how common sense gets lost in all the paperwork.
And that brings us back to this idea of mentorship that the guys on the Craic kept emphasizing.
Yeah, the importance of passing on that knowledge from the veterans to the new generation.
Exactly. Imagine having someone who's been there, done that, showing you the ropes, explaining all the little things that aren't in the manuals.
It's not just about technical skills either. It's about understanding the culture, anticipating problems, communicating effectively with everyone.
It's invaluable. And, we could even imagine these mentorship programs being integrated into apprenticeships or training courses.
Right, make it a standard part of professional development in the industry.
Exactly. And it's not just about the veterans sharing their wisdom. It's about management creating a space for two-way communication.
Yeah, actively seeking out the perspectives of the workers on the front lines.
Imagine regular roundtable discussions where workers can share their observations, suggest improvements, feel like their voices are actually being heard.
That would be a game changer.
And, another topic that sparked a lot of debate on the Craic was drug testing.
Yeah, that's a controversial one for sure.
It is. But most of the guys seem to agree that it's a necessary step to address substance use on construction sites.
And I think the key here is to shift the focus from punishment to prevention.
Right. It's about creating a safer work environment for everyone.
Exactly. If you know you could be tested at any time, it might make you think twice about showing up to work under the influence.
And that could prevent accidents, injuries, even fatalities.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's also about providing support and resources to workers who might be struggling with addiction.
Right. Maybe companies could partner with organizations that specialize in addiction recovery.
So workers can get the help they need without fear of judgment or losing their jobs.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that this is a complex issue and there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
But ignoring the problem is definitely not the answer.
Agreed. So we've talked about communication mentorship addressing substance use, but what about the bigger picture? How do we prevent these company collapses and hold those at the top accountable?
That's the million-dollar question. And the guys on the Craic had some strong opinions on this.
Yeah. What were they saying?
Well, they kept coming back to this need for greater transparency within the industry.
Transparency about what specifically?
Well, they talked about companies being more upfront about their finances, their bidding practices, even their safety records.
So basically making it harder for companies to hide risky behavior or questionable practices.
Right. It's about shining a light on their operations, encouraging them to be more accountable.
And that could help potential investors, clients, even workers themselves make more informed decisions.
Exactly. It's about shifting the balance of power, giving workers more agency.
But how do we actually implement these changes? It seems like such a daunting task.
It's definitely not going to be easy. It's going to require a collective effort from workers' management industry associations, even government regulators.
So it's not just about individual companies making changes. It's about a systemic shift in how the entire industry operates.
Yeah, and I think the guys on the Craic really highlighted that.
It's inspiring to see that there are people within the industry who are ready for this change.
Yeah, they're passionate, they're knowledgeable, and they're willing to speak up.
Their voices are so important. They're the ones who truly understand the realities of the job, the risks, the potential solutions.
And what really struck me was this strong sense of community among them.
Yeah, I felt that too.
Like, they might disagree on certain points, but there's this underlying respect, this shared experience that brings them together.
They were having these really frank discussions about some tough issues, but you could tell they genuinely cared about each other and the future of the industry.
And that's what gives me hope. If we can harness that sense of community, that shared commitment to making things better, then real change is possible.
It's not going to be easy, but as they say, the only way out is through. We need to confront these challenges, have those tough conversations, work together to create a better future for everyone involved in construction and demolition.
And these issues, they resonate far beyond the construction industry.
What do you mean?
This is about worker voice accountability, the need for systemic change in any industry where profits are often prioritized over people.
You're right. It's a much bigger conversation.
It's a call for all of us to be more aware, more engaged, more willing to speak up for what's right.
Absolutely. So let's take a moment to reflect on what we've discussed and consider how these insights might apply to our own lives, our own work, the industries we interact with.
Because at the end of the day, we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world of work.
So much to unpack here. We've uncovered some serious challenges in the construction and demolition world.
Yeah, substance use company collapses. It's a lot to grapple with.
But one thing that keeps coming back to me is this incredible desire for change from the workers themselves.
Right, and one thing that really stood out from the Craic conversations was this focus on individual responsibility.
Like, we can't just wait for the system to fix itself.
Exactly. Yes, systemic change is important, but everyone has a part to play.
It's about moving beyond. That's how it's always been done.
Yeah.
And asking, what can I do to make things better? So if you're a supervisor, that means setting high standards for safety and ethics, holding your team accountable.
And if you're a worker, it means speaking up when you see something wrong, not just going along with unsafe practices.
It takes guts to do that, though, especially when there's a fear of losing your job.
It does take courage. But as Mick pointed out, if enough people start speaking out, things can change.
Right. It's like a ripple effect.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of worker empowerment comes in.
So it's not just about reporting safety hazards. It's about having a real say in how the work is done.
Right. How decisions are made, how the industry evolves.
It's recognizing that the workers are the experts in many ways.
They know the job best. They understand the risks. They often have the best ideas for improvement.
Exactly. And it's not enough to just listen to their concerns.
Yeah.
It's about actively involving them in finding solutions.
Creating a collaborative environment where everyone feels valued and respected regardless of their position.
It's not just the right thing to do. It's also smart business.
Absolutely. When workers feel empowered and heard, they're more engaged, more productive, more likely to stay with the company.
Everyone wins.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key takeaway from the Craic conversations. It's not about tearing the industry down. It's about making it better.
Stronger, safer, fairer for everyone involved.
We're all in this together. Workers, management, everyone.
We all have a responsibility to make sure the industry operates ethically and sustainably.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this question.
Okay, shoot.
What can you do to make a difference in your own workplace?
That's a great question. Whether you're in construction or any other industry.
How can you contribute to a more positive and productive work environment?
If you're in a leadership role, how can you empower your team? How can you create a culture where everyone feels valued, respected, and heard?
These are the questions we should all be asking.
Because by working together, being open to new ideas, embracing change, we can create a better future for the construction and demolition industry and beyond.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of construction and demolition. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking.
And remember, change starts with each one of us.